Hello and welcome back to Building New Virginia. Today I will be working on the area southeast of the city and south of the southern area. It's a bit all over the place today. I'm not focusing on one area. The majority of the video will be this build, which is doing sort of the planning of an area. This is a pretty interesting area. This is the Edge City. So this is the southeastern Edge City. This one is going to be the biggest of them all on the map. This takes a lot of inspiration from Tysons, or it will, from Tysons in Virginia. And so currently just working on sort of the planning today. I won't be doing much of the detailing. Just sort of getting a rough idea of what I want it to look like, and also trying to get the roads worked out. So that way I have like a good idea of what I have, and that way it's easier to just jump into it when I want to go and detail it. You know, since I don't have to like try and plot out everything for when I want to detail it, I can just come over here and start jumping into it right away. So that's one of the reasons why I like to do planning a lot of the time. It just makes it easier so I can quickly jump into it. But I also do a lot of intersection building today. So it's not quite like all just like rows with nothing. A lot of it is also like this, which is where I'm trying to build intersections that are just a pain in the butt to build. So yeah, lots of intersections because this is a hugely auto-oriented place. Not many people here are going to be driving. Not many people here are going to be taking transit. Most common way to get around is via car. And so a lot of road infrastructure goes into this, especially for the highways, because that's how most people get here. You know, this is a very commuter-oriented place as well. Like most Edge cities, this has a lot of offices and such in it. So there's two main reasons people will come here. It's mostly either to work or to shop, and that's about it. That's the main reason people will come to the Edge cities, and so this is one of those right here. So lots of car infrastructure. The area probably predates, has had some settlement, sort of like how Tysons in Virginia had like a small like human settlement. Like there were still farm fields and stuff, but like there wasn't really any town except just some guy's corner store, and that's how the area got the name Tysons Corner, if you never knew. It was that some guy had a corner store here. His name was Tysons, and yeah, it was just called Tysons Corner. And then it sort of grew when they built the mall there in the 70s. Tysons 1, or as it's probably more known as outside of DC, Tysons Center. That's the first one. And we both have two malls in this Edge City as well, so there's going to be two malls in here. They're smaller than the one in St. James's Place, which is just across the river along the Beltway. Oh, yeah, for the roads around here. The main one that you see in the background right now, that's the Beltway. And that one is going to wrap around. And then the other one, the big sort of mess of an interchange, is I-95. And that's, you know, if you're in the East Coast, you know that road. That's supposed to be like the big north-south road that takes you from each city. And so I-95 won't go through the city center here, but it will use the Orbital Road. So it will use 595, which is what I'm going to call the Orbital Road. And that's how it gets from one side to the other. There were plans to build a freeway that would have gone through the city center for I-95, but it got shot down thankfully, and so it just terminates here. We're also, another interesting thing about this area is that we are on the other side of political boundaries, and we're not in the jurisdiction of New Virginia anymore. So I think that's also pretty cool, because if you notice on the big mess of an interchange, the 595 and I-95 one, there's a little bit of a stub that turns around, and that's sort of like my idea. Like, it was originally built to provision because, you know, they wanted to take I-95 further through the urban area and hit the downtown directly. But since that got shot down, that was never built out, so they just turned it around. You can kind of see that in some places in Maryland, like when I-95 hits 495 here in the DC area, and how when it reaches 495, you can see like it goes further and then it just ends. US 70 outside Baltimore does something similar as well. So yeah, that's sort of what my idea was here. And like the I-95 up here got the go-ahead because it was inside the suburban counties, and so this was quite a big thing for them. But the city of New Virginia ended up shooting it down from political pressure, and so it just ended right here. It doesn't go any further. Just acts as like a turnaround loop. I might put something there, like, I don't know, a truck weighing station or something. I think they have something similar in either the US 71 outside Baltimore or the I-95 one. Anyways, starting to work more on the sort of road pattern. Big open spaced blocks, more focused on moving large amounts of cars. You know, 4-lane roads are the norm here. And right now I'm just trying to work on this intersection, which was an absolute pain. TPF does not like doing right turn slip lanes, and I really want to have one here because this would be a major, you know, right turns would be a really major move here in this intersection because a lot of people would be wanting to get to the main drag. So I was trying to get it so I could have a right turn slip lane, just have it so drivers don't have to stop for pedestrians or stop at the intersection. But the game was just not having any of it. I don't know why. It just seems to have a weird thing against right turn slip lanes. I don't know why it does this. It's like, I think it has something to do with what the maximum angle it allows is, but I don't know. Even still, what you think would have been a tolerable angle, it was still saying collision. So I don't know. It was quite annoying. I think I eventually did get it to work after so many numerous tries. I don't think I'm gonna get it yet. This might be it. Not this one exactly, but when I do this, or maybe is this it? Yeah, okay. I just give up and do something like that instead of just trying to do a simple straight road. So yeah, right turn slip lanes are an absolute pain. They should be much easier. I want to do more of them because they're quite common. Anyways, just quickly plotting out a road layout that looks feasible for an X city. You know, lots of looping roads. They're bigger, they're trying to really get people from major destination. Then I just do a quick little thing. This is my trick to get sort of like town names so you can sort of see where you are. It's just to plop down a town and then, you know, demolish every single building in it. And then once it hits 0 population, the town, they don't build any more buildings anymore, so it just stays infinitely depopulated. They do try to build roads, which is kind of annoying, and you have to kind of like be on the lookout for them and make sure you build like barriers so that they don't try and build them. But other than that, it's a good way to sort of get labels for places without having to actually deal with the AI who are a right mess. Anyway, here's an interesting spot. I was trying to get a bridge across this river, which is like a major, it's not the big river nor is it navigable, but it's a very big flowing water body. So I'm trying to get a bridge across it. But it's just kind of difficult to not get something that feels so tall because I'm also having to try and cross the rail line across it. And so I don't know what I'm going to try and do for this location. I want to get another connection so we can go up into sort of the areas north of here and hit lots of those suburbs, and because I think that would be a pretty major connection to have at least an arterial running to, but it's just kind of difficult with this. I don't know. I might try and realign the track line, and maybe that could help a bit. But anyways, I gave up on that and just had it sort of dead end. Then comes the interesting part of building it. So there's these hotel assets on the workshop, and they're about the closest thing for the buildings that would make sense for this. Because a lot of X cities have a lot of sort of like 80s, 90s architecture, and a lot of that is sort of the ribbon band of glass surrounded by concrete, etc. But we don't have a lot of good buildings on the workshop, so I have to constantly reuse those hotel ones over and over to try and get a nice sort of skyline. It's not the most preferable thing, but I think it kind of works because it's not very distinguishable from one another, and I'm hoping like their surrounding uses and context will help give them distinguished. But also, Egg City buildings aren't always the most iconic thing. Like, they're not something you'll recognize separate from another. They kind of do get a bit repetitive after a while. So yeah, I'm also interspersing some of the asset expansion buildings in there. Some of those have the right sort of feeling, and those work as well to sort of, you know, give it an Egg City vibe. I'm also trying to locate most of the density along the main drag, so that way it's sort of like that's the area you want to be on. It's also where the two malls would be, and it's also like 6 lanes wide. It's quite big. So that's that area. I think I placed down like 1 building and then call it a day. I don't end up keeping that one because I kind of didn't like, it felt like its context made more sense in a downtown as a modern office building, and I also placed it already in downtown, so I just decided to remove it, and I think it works out fine. What else? Plotting out the malls. So this mall I'm working on right now, this would be what the Tysons one would be. Built in the 70s, it's an older, it's not the biggest mall, but it's also not the smallest mall. I haven't built it yet. It's also fairly simple. Tysons is not a very complex mall. It has a lot of parking, and it looks really big because of all of the parking garages that surround it. But it's not the most complex thing out there. It's pretty simple to follow. Most malls aren't actually. And yeah, that second one I did just south, that's supposed to be sort of like the Tysons 2 or Tysons Galleria. That's a more modern-ish, like built in the 80s, but wealthier mall. So like basically no one ever goes there. Yeah, no one ever goes to Tysons 2. At least no one who's like normal goes there. Probably rich people go there more often, but even still, I don't know of how many people who regularly visit that one over the existing one. Anyways, just a few more road planning, and I think that's it for what I do for the Egg City. Maybe. I think so. Unless... Oh, I also do a bit more planning on roads. Alright, so if you see what I'm doing here is I'm trying to plan out like what commercial and like strip retail would be. And that's what I'm just doing right here. This is another sort of major area. That'll be a smaller point of focus. That'll be Bailey's Crossroads inspired area. So it's just a strip malls surrounded by like an intersection. It's not an Egg City, there's not a lot of office, but it's a lot of concentration of commercial in there. So they kind of get big because of the big strip malls. Anyways, you just saw St. James's Place. That's sort of like, that's inspired by Prince George's Mall. Or is it Prince George's Place? I can't remember the mall. It's the one off the Green Line, north of DC. I can't remember what it's called. It's closed down, I think. And that's what that area was inspired by. Moving along, also doing a bit of work on the inner city. So this is some of the southern areas. You can sort of see the West Highland area. We're working just south of that. And I'm going to be doing some pretty repetitive stuff of just placing down row houses. The community won't get any detailing, but it's just going to get... more bulk into the area, so it looks more finished and more complete. You know, more stuff to see in the background. So it's not all that like distinguished. A lot of these row house areas are pretty darn repetitive because it's just the same sort of housing type. I wish I had more row house variety because, well, these ones work great and they look and they get this sort of idea of what they're supposed to be across. It's nowhere close to the real thing. Like, they're all 3 stories. I kind of wish I just had some 2-story ones. They don't have flat roofs. They're not long. They're more square, but in real life row houses are quite long but thin, and that's how you get so many on a block. Because they're derived from terraced houses in the UK. It's that same sort of concept that those have. But here it's sort of kind of broken apart. And the terraced houses we have are a bit too British looking, not really American looking, because they're they have a lot of British features like bay windows and not a lot of like American architecture on it as well. Moving on, this is a different area. This is a Smith's Landing. This is me trying to build out Smith's Landing, which is a quite distressed area. This area has just seen a lot of jobs flee out of it because it used to be sort of the southern area of the Portlands, and so a lot of jobs were located here. But as time moved on and sort of like it de-densified, a lot less jobs were needed, and also it moved more to warehousing, which is, I don't think, as job intensive as what it would have been, especially if it were like much denser as it would have been with more vertical warehousing and switching. And it's also undergoing some redevelopment. The city is trying to push Waterfront Redevelopment. That's sort of what the stadium is, which is just north of here. It's trying to push the redevelopment of this entire area, but it's kind of hitting a wall because developers don't really want to touch this area because, again, it's not the most nice area, to put it nicely, I guess. Crime is definitely up. Houses are dirt cheap, but a lot of them are just sitting vacant most of the time. And so it doesn't seem like the nicest area, and this is probably not one of those neighborhoods you'd want to move into. It's very rough. It has seen much better days, but you know, a lot of the jobs moving away from the port has just did a number to this area, and so that's why a lot of the row houses are not like wall to wall like in most other areas. It's very open because there's a lot of areas where row houses were just knocked down because, you know, no one was living in them. They were absolutely deteriorating, and the city actually had to go through and bulldoze it. Not a lot of public housing. I think I really should have put more public housing in this area because that's something else that would have been common. Through here would have been lots of public housing units, but I mean, I think it still works for the story. But, you know, this area is still seeing some change. Like, the city hasn't given up on trying to redevelop this waterfront, and there's still lots of change that is coming right now in the form of there's a development on the south side that's being built, like on the river, right on the riverfront that's being built. It's a bit more removed from everything, but it's also kind of going to be fenced off and walled off from everything around it. Just because, again, what's around it is not the nicest. It's not in the neighborhood heart, it's more surrounded by industrial lands and a river. So that's probably why it was able to get built, because it wasn't right next in the heart of the neighborhood here. But it's still going to be a bit sort of fenced off, like, not fenced off, like, how would you say this, like, closed off. The rail line goes past it as well, so that creates some barriers to the area around it. Yeah, this area is just very caught up in, like, what the city wants it to become, but what it's not becoming, because it just isn't changing, because no one really wants to build here. So anyways, really trying to give it this sort of distressed neighborhood aesthetic, with lots of vacant land that's just sitting there. Once there were row houses, now it is just bushes and weeds. A lot of it has been demolished. Again, vacant row houses would have been left, but then because they just sat vacant and there was no one maintaining them, they just would have fallen into disrepair, and thus they would have had to been demolished, most likely by the city, to prevent future damage to neighboring property owners. So yeah, that's why there's a lot of lots, just a lot of open space. I tried to mess with textures using sort of a combination of just normal grass, a small amount of dirt, and a small amount of the grayish gravel. Not sure how to describe that one. And then putting in a lot of foliage on top. The mixed foliage to sort of give it like it's not kept. This is an interesting place and location. This is an abandoned playground, probably built as part of a revitalization effort back in like the 70s or 80s. But it just hasn't seen much use at all, and it kind of started getting overgrown when they stopped caring to maintain it. And so it just sits here, a bit overgrown, a bit of an interesting spot, location. You know, lots of bushes. It has a cool photographic opportunity, I will say, because it's just interesting, you know, deteriorated playground, not something you see. Also trying to add graffiti here. Lots of really basic ones as well. Nothing like too elaborate or complex like you find like dedicated spaces for art. Like this is just quick tags that would be on these buildings. Also trying to do some of reuses of the vacant space, like turning them into parking lots and such, where like, you know, they probably, like a business owner on the corner might have just turned their backyard into a parking lot. I think I do that in another location around here, where it's just a vacant, or where houses don't exist, they just put a parking lot up to somehow help the main street. The main street was once a streetcar. This is Smith Avenue. That's sort of the main street-ish. That's where most of the commercial activity would have happened. The S1 bus now runs along there. It's it's one of the higher ridership routes for the area it services. But it once was a streetcar, and that streetcar did turn around in an area. Area was called Southwalk, and that's just south of the river. And that's just south of here. I don't think I showed that in this one video though. It's I don't work on it in this one. I have worked on it recently, but I don't show it in this video. Still continuing on here, really trying to put in backyards, because I think backyards really make this area feel more finished. In much of the other areas, I can really easily get away with just putting a fence and just putting up trees, but here I feel like because of the spread outness of the row houses, you kind of can notice these backyards much easier from afar because it's so open. And so I went through to make sure that they feel like they're actually built out, and so they don't feel like it's just, they feel real-ish. Mostly just put right ground textures, maybe some have a paved, some park their cars back there. Maybe some keep grass back there. All in all, it's mostly just variation to give more interest to the eye so it looks different. Here, really trying to put in a lot of grass. I kind of wish there was a way to just place down the just the grass particles, but quicker. Like just a different sort of terrain brush, but just for the particles on the ground. Like that would be kind of cool, you know, because the trick to just get the particle, the sprites, maybe that's what it's called. The trick to just get the sprites is that you have to put it down to basically not 0, but 1 above 0, so it doesn't change the ground texture and it only spawns the sprites. And then you can easily put that around there. And so you can get sort of like, you know, just weeds. And that's how sort of like the extra vegetation mod works, which I use a lot here. But I kind of wish you could sort of speed that up and just the sprite placement. Anyways, quickly working on some more of the Portlands. This is the Souza area, I guess, as well. That's what that area is. This is the port, but like, the rail yards, that's known as Souza, south of Smith Avenue. I moved Sova because I kind of realized that a lot of those sort of like abbreviation districts aren't really residential, they're more former industrial districts because, you know, it doesn't have a name. So I moved the more industrial one of the rail yard area, and now that's called Souza. Well, what was once Sova is now called Triangle because the area is sort of bounded in by a triangle from the rail lines and also Virginia Avenue. Here, just working on a small oil tank setup. Have a lot of the catch basins, I think that's what it's called, around there. And that's a lot of sort of the Portland's done, and continuing sort of the detail through the south. I don't know what to do with that area. And that's it. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.